Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the past classics, that is E3, Harelbeke, even though it's not called Harelbeke anymore, Gent-Wevelgem, Dwars door Vlaanderen, Tour of Flanders. That will be our first part, a short recap of what the cyclocross riders have been doing, covering a bit of the Mountain Bike World Cup as well in that process. And then we're going to shift our attention to the latest news from cyclocross. We'll be discussing a new deal between Lotto and Deschacht hence FSP. We'll be discussing that in the context of what it means for the remaining cyclocross teams. And with me to that is Issam. Thank you for being here.
Yes, no worries. Thank you for having me.
Let's start, as said, with that discussion about the road. We've taken a few weeks off since we last recorded. I believe the last time was after Milan-San Remo, and we covered the IOC elections as well. Since I've had some uni exams, hopefully the last ones of my master program, we've had a short trip, at least I had a short trip to France for some riding. And you, Issam, what have you been up to? A bit of relaxation post-cyclocross season?
Yeah, a little bit. I've been working on some liveries for some cars, so hopefully that will be working out. And yeah, I've enjoyed Formula One. I've enjoyed some road cycling on my TV, and it has been fun. It's been long over the cyclocross season ending, and that is somewhat behind us. And now we can, slowly but surely look to the progress of certain riders, what they're doing in the disciplines on the road, and also mountain bike starting last weekend. So yeah, it's interesting to follow for sure.
Let's start then with Mathieu van der Poel, the cyclocross world champion. He won Milan-San Remo, which we covered. Then he won the E3 Saxo Classic with a very long solo in kind of similar fashion like last year. And then there was the Tour of Flanders last weekend. He crashed early on, I think about 120k to go, just after the first Kwaremond. He managed to come back. He said it wasn't ideal, but that it didn't hamper him too much. For the rest of the race, we saw him race in a way that's not really typical. In the past few years, he's really developed into a rider that's positioned really well, but here we repeatedly saw him need to move past riders to respond to attacks by Pogačar. He was able to follow until the final ascent of the Oude Kwaremond. He got dropped there and sprinted to third place in the end. Post-finish, he said that he had been sick a little bit and that is why he wasn't at 100%. What do you make of his Classics campaign so far, of course, with Paris-Roubaix still to come next week?
Yeah, I think that he was, if you look at his performance in the A3 Saxo Classic, I think that he was sublime and in form. And, that was a form in which I was speculating if it was going to be enough to follow Tadej Pogačar. But as you said, I think in Flanders it was for him it was a very odd way of racing, I guess. Especially, the second passage of the Kwaremond, you have to be there because Pogačar, with no doubt, will be there at the front. And he wasn't. There was quite an effort that he had to put in to be back in his wheel, which I think wasn't really necessary. And I don't think that those were his issues in the end. I think that it was just, he wasn't in a very good form. And I do believe in that part of the story in which, he may have endured an illness and was not good enough. You could see that, the base condition was somewhat there, but he was just, the edge was off. And when you don't have that, especially with a Pogačar, it's not going to happen. And I think that for him, for sure, he wanted to have that record, having most wins in Tour of Flanders, and he wanted to be victorious. But I think that he can look back on the race and be relatively happy, knowing already winning San Remo, showcasing that form in the E3 Saxo Classic, and hopefully he is going to be able for himself to recover, or at least just get better, get that edge somewhat back and be in good form again in Paris-Roubaix, which I think with no doubt there will be a course that suits him way better, and he will be one of the main favorites.
The Tour of Flanders on the new course, which isn't that new anymore, the current course, which is different from the Bosberg, Muur van Gerardsbergen final. The final loop from the second Kwaremond to the third Kwaremond is just so heavy. All the toughest hills are packed into that section. You have not just twice Quaremont-Paterberg. You also have the Koppenberg, there's the Taaienberg, the Oude Kruisberg, Hotont is in there. It's such demanding and such grilling climbing that riders like Pogačar, who have the climbing legs but also the ability to position themselves properly within groups, that they can really use their climbing abilities to drain the legs of the heavier riders in a way that they can't in Milan-San Remo and in a way that they can't do in, for instance, Paris-Roubaix next week. So it's a dynamic here, and I think if you look at the way that teams are starting to treat the Tour of Flanders, that they are realizing more and more that this course that they are racing on right now suits their climbing type riders a lot better than what was previously assumed. Of course, this year you saw that there was a big group sprinting for 8th, 9th, 10th, but if you look at the top 10 of last year, you can see that riders like Jorgensen and riders last year, Morgado was up there. Those type of riders are more the climby type of riders, and since Valverde and Nibali both raced relatively well here in the Tour of Flanders, you could see that more teams are sending riders like this here. Quickstep is speculating about sending Evenepoel to this race. I think for Evenepoel, positioning is an issue. It's a similar reason why I don't think that Lotto's decision to send Van Eetveld here would necessarily have worked, but it does play into the cards of Pogačar, and to beat such a talented climber on a course like this, to even have a chance, you need to be at 100%, and Van der Poel clearly wasn't. You could hear that he was still a bit stuffy in the post-race interview. He's not the type of rider to lie about an illness post-race to bring it up as an excuse. He could have positioned himself better, but in the end, I doubt it would have really made a difference. Pogačar was the deserved winner on the day. Van der Poel sprinted to third, beating just on the line Wout van Aert. Van Aert didn't race San Remo. In E3, he was nowhere to be seen. Then he had Dwars door Vlaanderen, which was an embarrassment for Visma. The entire team, 3v1 situation against Pauwels. They choked it. Van Aert made some wrong decisions there. He said, I told the team to ride for me, that I would win the sprint. I messed up. Expectations were probably at an all-time low for Van Aert. Issam, is that fair to say coming into the Tour of Flanders? That then, despite those expectations, he kind of performed more like what we would have expected prior to the season even?
No, I think that after Flanders, there were a lot of people that would say that they expected the performance from Van Aert, but no, I think, as you say, it was probably at an all-time low. He was just not there yet, and there were no indications that he was going to be in good form going into Flanders. And I think that the way he raced in Flanders was great. It's not really a course that suits him well. You know, he's someone that can get over the hills quite well, but it's just, you know, compared to a Van der Poel and a Pogačar, it's just for him a bit difficult to keep up. But I think that he managed quite well, and it would have been a bit better that day if he was able to get on the podium. But nevertheless, you can really see that he was somewhat relieved that he was able to perform the way he did, and he also knows that with the weekend coming up, Paris-Roubaix, that is just going to be a race that is suiting him, in my opinion, way more. And he's just someone to watch. He's definitely going to be entering that race with, you know, he really wants to, very eager to get the win. And that is, you know, that would be somewhat of a story if he was going to be able to make that a success. But there were a lot of questions on his preparation, but I think that in hindsight, he's the one that is somewhat right, and the others were a bit wrong. And let's see what this weekend will bring.
It's easy to say because we are recording now, but the reaction to E3 was always going to be an exaggeration, right? He didn't feature, but he also wasn't horrible, because if you read between the lines, you could see that he attacked on the Oude Quaremont from the chasing group. He was horribly out of position when the decisive move was made, which is a key point and problem for him. He seemed to have solved that for the Tour of Flanders, and it was fair that there was some criticism of that performance, but the extent to which he was completely written off was, I think, not completely fair, because, again, E3, but also Dwars door Vlaanderen, these are the races where the climbs are further away from the finish than in the Tour of Flanders. They aren't as hard. So if you miss the move and you then decide not to contend the sprint for place XYZ, then you're immediately going to have a reactionary response to Van Aert ends 30th, rather than, oh, okay, he was probably the 5th strongest rider in this race, and if he can be a little bit better, he can contend for the podium next week. He rode with courage. He made that move before the final out of Quaremont. He rode with Grinta, fighting on the Kruisberg, making real pushes. I liked what I saw from him, and I hope that he can win Paris-Roubaix next week, because I think it would be a great story for him. It's a race where he's had so much misfortune, and for him it's a very special race, not because it's always been his favorite race, but also because in the first edition that he raced there, his teammate Michael Golaerts died during the race. So I think it would be a very, very beautiful story if he could take that win next weekend. Then sticking on the men's side, Issam, Thibaut Nys, he didn't race the Tour of Flanders, but what he did do was race Gran Premio Miguel Indurain. I know you had some observations you would like to share with our followers, listeners.
I didn't watch the entirety of the race, but I watched the decisive move eventually from Nys with a couple of kilometers to go, and his push there, the attack that he placed there was super strong. And I think that I've said it already before, and I will say it again. He really reminds me of a Philippe Gilbert in his prime days in terms of form. It's very hard to judge what his potential will be and all that, but I really liked what I saw there. He won that race convincingly, and I think that sure it's a small race. It doesn't really say much, but I think for him to be that, that's his first race back on a road bike, and then being able to immediately put your stamp on it and win the race is somewhat telling. And I think that with La Flèche Wallonne, he is definitely someone that I think if his race goes well and he's able to get through the course well, and he has something left in the tank when they go for the last time Mur Huy. I don't know what is possible, but it could very well be for a top 3 or a win. So he made some steps again, and hopefully we'll be able to showcase that. And he has been. It seems like he had a very good winter, and is now exploiting that on the road.
That was definitely an impressive ride by Thibaut Nys, and I too look forward to seeing what he can do in the Ardennes Classics. Flèche Wallonne, Amstel Gold Race, I think will be the best type of races for him. Liège, well, I think he can do fine. I think the climbs there are just probably a little bit too long, but it should indeed be exciting. Personally, I was watching a bit of mountain biking this weekend. I didn't watch the Indurain race. I only saw the clip from the finish. And there, of course, it's the early season on the mountain bike. Not everybody makes a trip to Brazil. Not everybody is in great form. All these variables, but the racing there always delivers. Passionate fans. I think they have a well-balanced course there, and it's good to see a robust foundation of Brazilian World Cup mountain bike races there now with that passion. And again, I do think that cyclocross, when they're talking about international expansion, it's a far step away, but if they do think about globalization, that Latin America should be a market they tap into, because the people love bike racing there. A lot of our followers on Instagram are actually from Colombia and Brazil. Probably some of them attended that race there, so it was intriguing to see. A couple of things I noticed: Dario Lillo, who finished 11th at the Cyclocross European Championships, cut his season super short. Remember him from the youth days, coming through as a talent on Deschacht, then shifting to mountain bike, making the step to the elites on the mountain bike now, doing fairly well, finishing just outside of the top 10. Men U23, not many cyclocross riders there, but on the women's U23 side, we did see Isabella Holmgren take the win. So yeah, it's early days, but there was some really nice battling going on there for the wins, especially the short track racing was fierce as ever. Puck Pieterse didn't race there in Brazil, obviously still focusing on her road campaign. What did you make of her performance in Tour of Flanders, Issam? She had an early crash, then her derailleur broke, and she got stuck on a small or big gear, depending on if it was uphill or downhill, far from ideal. Then she changed bikes, but tactically it didn't seem like the perfect race to me, making a lot of moves early on the Taaienberg, on the Koppenberg, but ultimately when it was crunch time, she lacked the legs to follow the best of the best.
if you look at the way she was racing the last, what can I say, 25 kilometers or so, she was doing, in my opinion, way too much in between the climbs. I think that Pieterse is not someone that you can expect to drop a nuclear on one of those climbs, like a Kopecky, for example, or so, but it doesn't help. The details will count in the end, and I think that if it wasn't for that, I don't know if it was going to be possible for her to be in that first group, but I think that it could potentially have happened. And yeah, it was a bit questionable the way she was racing, but I think that maybe you can account that a little bit to experience, I guess. For her, it's not really, she hasn't been there at the front racing for many years. With experience, at times you will be able to read the race a little bit better, and then you can make your moves, just be a bit more, a bit smarter with the energy that you have, because especially with on the women's side and last race in Flanders, it's the details that in the end decide if you were up there with the first group or not. It was not that there was, like on the men's side, that there was basically one guy that completely destroyed the rest and the others were trying to hang on. That wasn't really the case. And I think then, yeah, it was a bit of a shame that she wasn't able to do that. But I think that if you look overall, the potential that she has on the road, it's quite incredible where she's at the moment. And for me, to be honest, somewhat of a surprise the way she has developed on the road.
If you look at it that way, yes, it's still a very good result and consistent, right? She's finished in the top 10 of every single road race she's done this season, and I'll circle back to that in a bit. But yes, compare this to, where were we, 2 seasons ago, 2023, when they announced that Pieterse, in the wake of Van Empel also racing road, would take on road, and Pieterse finished 5th in Strade. We were, whoa, this is super exciting. Isn't she gonna maybe do some more road racing? No, that was it. Then they cut it short there. Last year they announced a bit more extensive program, but they were still a bit cautious because of those mountain bike ambitions, and then now it's road. And she's doing really well, because we expected more from Van Empel than Pieterse. But to circle back to that fact, she's finished in the top 10 of all the races she's done. But she's also treating the spring like an all-you-can-eat buffet. She's ticking all the boxes. She's done every single race. Omloop het Nieuwsblad, and then where most don't race, Omloop het Haagland, she started there. Then it was Strade Bianche. Then the day after, she raced Trofeo Oro. The next week it was Trofeo Binda. Then it was Sanremo, Dwars door Vlaanderen, Tour of Flanders. Next week she's racing Paris-Roubaix. Then she's racing Amstel Gold, Flèche, Liège. She's doing the full micmac, and that's an atypical approach. You see that most riders definitely make their choices to preserve some freshness and to do some training. So I do wonder if that at the end will be the right approach, because if you remember back to last year, she stopped at the Tour of Flanders and then she won the Liège-Bastogne-Liège stage in the Tour. So based on that, they want to see what she can do there, which makes sense, but it's a lot of racing.
Yeah, it is a lot of racing, and you already know that there are going to be some riders that will have their focus more on the Ardennes Classics, and that is not going to make her life that much easier. I think that it is a bit over the top, the racing program, and I think, what I hope at least, is that they can make decisions from what they have seen and observed this year. Because, as I said before, I think that we can somewhat conclude that Pieterse currently doesn't really have that attack where she can drop everyone from the wheel on those coupled climbs. And then maybe you have to look into the potential that you might have. Maybe Liège-Bastogne-Liège is a race that suits her a little bit better. And if that is the case, maybe you have to, you actually get some weeks off, or at least some weeks to prepare more towards those races and have less of a load in the road season, because I think that mountain bike will still play a role for Pieterse this season. Yeah, it seems just a bit too much, but I hope they can pick some positives from it. Otherwise, it's a bit, I don't know. It's just a bit weird, and it's not really smart and not really responsible in a way.
In the light of road racing and road programs, let's talk about the new partnership between Lotto, the pro-continental road team, which is likely to return to the World Tour, almost guaranteed for next season, and Deschacht hence FSP. The deal itself has been announced on Monday, but the details are not fully known yet. What is clear is that there will be some sort of exchange between these two teams. Toon Aerts will race for Lotto on the road, Victor van der Putte as well. Then the Deschacht cross team will in return take care of a number of cyclocross riders from Lotto, Arne Baars and Sterre Vervloed, Ilke Senaye as well. What are your thoughts so far, Issam? Because there's still a lot unknown here.
It's a bit unclear what they have planned for the long term, I guess. For the short term, it looks positive for those riders, I guess, because they now, especially for someone like Toon Aerts, it's always better if you are within such a team like Lotto, that it just offers you just a little bit more than what he was going to be offered with before that. And so I think his situation for sure has improved, and definitely for the other riders it has improved as well. It's hard to judge what will happen in the long term. How will this partnership intensify? For sure looks like Hans Maas will be able to offer a program which is a little bit more interesting for young talent, I guess. And I think that was something that they didn't really have before. I think in that regard, it is definitely a positive. But it's for me, there is not really that much details on the long term. And that is, for me, something that I am looking at and a bit more interested in. And, we have to wait and see how that will play out.
The details here will be important in determining just how successful this partnership is for either of these two teams. I do think that on face value, it's beneficial for both, right? So Deschacht, their current riders, Victor van der Putte and Toon Aerts, they can benefit from a better road program. Conversely, for Lotto, they can offer their existing riders a bit more cyclocross support from a few dedicated trainers. Perhaps it's easier for them because they can use some of their camper vans or share mechanics and those type of things. So an exchange program in that way between those riders, that will be beneficial for both. It's easy to see how. But then in the future, how does this deal develop? We know that Deschacht needs money. They're broke. They made a big bet on Toon Aerts and they hoped that would attract many new sponsors. They found FSP as new partner, but it's not really sufficient for them to really reach a level that they want to. They, with Aerts, have a rider at the front of the races giving them publicity, but they ideally want to be a full-on, full-time cyclocross team that has multiple riders that can finish in the top 10. And of course, not every time that needs to happen, but they want to be a bit more versatile, a bit less dependent on Aerts, and for that they need money. Last year they had to let their best rider, Anton Ferdinand, go. We've seen them leave Vincent Bassans after a great season, hang him out to dry. It's a team that has been iffy and a bit shaky. They need money to add to those ambitions, and for sure this deal will allow them to attract riders like Gilles Lejeune. It will strengthen their position with him. Lejeune currently races for them as a junior. He is a second-year junior next year. Many teams will be interested in signing him, and now they at least have the infrastructure to say, hey, if you race for us, we can offer you a solid road program. But there are still a few things here, Issam, that make me wonder how good is this match between these two teams. Because, first of all, Deschacht became a pro cyclocross team, which allowed them to race road races as a point cyclocross pro team. That ambition seems to have stalled now. But what does this mean for the riders that aren't eligible for the Lotto team? What does it mean for Iris Offrein or Robin Marchand? Does their road program just completely collapse and they reduce to racing crits? Because they aren't that big of a team. And second of all, this is especially beneficial for the women's side, because on the women's side, the competition is very, very fierce between cyclocross and road teams. Almost every talent is multidisciplinary, and almost all of them are approached by road teams. And if you don't offer a program, you miss out. But so far, the women's side has not at all been a priority of Deschacht. They've never really treated that seriously. They tried to set up something with Meka Baga, but then they dumped her in a very nasty way. So these are the things that I wonder, how good is this going to fit? And then it comes down to, does the team receive money that will help them sign more riders? I don't know. There's so many unknowns, and the more I think about it, the more doubts I also have about just in general, but I think that's more related to the level of professionalism we have seen from Deschacht over the past few years.
Yeah, it lacks the longevity, I guess. It's in a way it looks like trying to get some publicity and boost the esteem of the team a little bit, and maybe try in that way also attract some new sponsors. I don't know, but I think it's a fair point to say that it was a team, or it is a team actually, that financially isn't in the best of states, and it struggles to keep their riders. That transfer of Tonaerts was already one in which they found a lot of difficulty with financially. So it is going to be interesting how that all will play out, and if they will maybe go into a new direction and drop some of the riders that would not be eligible for the Lotto program in a way on the road in during the summer and all that. But it's a bit tricky for them, and it's I think that we will find out maybe somewhere in the summer or so, or maybe going into the winter, that how that will look like and what will happen. I don't know, but we might get some clearance on that. But it feels a bit empty, the partnership. But I think that if they would be able to make it work, I think it would be very beneficial for Hens Maas, because it puts them in a better position, I guess. And it's for if you want to be there with the youth riders, and you want to be able to pick them quite young, and hope for the best in terms of potential and talent, I think then you kind of are forced into these type of constructions and partnerships. We have talked about it, that it is currently, at least, it's important, if you want to offer these multidisciplinary talents a future, that you need to offer both a road program and also something in cyclocross. And I think that if you look at it in that perspective, it's quite a good development for Hens Maas, and we will have to wait and see if that will play out. But I think it has the potential for them to at least be somewhat competitive against teams like Roodhoofd, because, or not like Roodhoofd, but the teams that Roodhoofd has, I guess. It's very hard to compete with those, because the talent, especially if they're multidisciplinary and they have ambitions on the road, they can just basically, with Roodhoofd and what he can offer, it's just almost impossible to compete with. And I think with this partnership, it'd be somewhat more possible for certain talents to look at and be at least interested. So we have to wait and see how that will play out. But I think that we both are kind of looking for, the things that will happen in the long term and the details of that. And those have not really been disclosed and told yet.
The partnership itself is a good idea, and it will benefit both for the reasons you mentioned. It will really help Hens FSP, but I guess my main concerns are just about the team in general, Issam, because the way that I read this partnership is that Lotto will enter the rider market, and they will say, for instance, Filippo Grigolini next year, this is a talented Italian junior, he looked good, we're going to sign him, we think he has potential, and in our deal we will tell him that we have a good cyclocross structure with Deschacht where he can develop his skills there as well. And that they have riders like Arne Baars and Sterre Vervloed and Ilke Senai who currently do cross, not as priority but for fun, that they can give them better support and that the team doesn't need to worry about. But Hens FSP will need to enter the rider market for cyclocross themselves. And as long as there's not a certain swap of jerseys, meaning that those Lotto riders race for Hens Maas in cyclocross, it will be hard for them to attract money. And they need that because the team currently has 4 riders. So before we can discuss maybe more in depth the impact of such partnership and, for instance, the situation of Pauwels Sauzen, what do you think that Deschacht should do, Issam? Because They've lost a lot of riders over the last couple of years. They have 4 riders on their contract. Toon Aerts, Robin Marchand, Iris Hofrein, Victor van der Putten. Van Kessel is retired. Maxime Croquet is not a serious cyclocross rider. He is a road rider for their team that also does a tad of cyclocross racing. So they have 4 riders. 2 of them have expiring contracts, Marchand and Hofrein. What should the move be for this team over the summer? Because it's a very, very tiny core group of riders that they have. And even if they get that influx of those Lotto riders, that's not really appearing to be the case that they will be part of that team.
They are in a situation in which they can try and have some new influence in the team and go in a different direction, I guess. It's very well possible. If I were them, I would probably focus more on talent and try to see if I can scoop something there. I think that they have to look into the long term, and they also have to make sure that they explain that to everyone involved in the team, also financially, because it could be, apart from Aerts in a way, and we don't know how Van der Putten will perform in the next coming years, but that could be something. But it could be a very dire year in which they are not going to have that much success. Toon Aerts is also not really the youngest. He still have a couple of years in him, but who knows how long that will go. So they have to make some decisions. I think that if they really want to make the step forward, I think they can definitely make some steps in their professionalism in terms of the bike that they are running right now, because it seems a bit outdated. They could definitely also look into the talent as well, as I said before, and financially they have to find some more money somewhere. You don't want to be in a situation in which you always have to think twice about signing a rider, and basically your main solution is cutting another rider from your team. I think that for sure it will make sense if certain rider didn't really perform well, then it will make sense. But we have seen in the past that at times the riders did perform, but at the end of it were still cut. So I think in that regard they definitely have to. They are in a position right now, I think, where they can make a lot of changes to the team, but you have to be willing, and there has to be commitment from the lead of Deschacht and FSP, and we'll see if that is going to be the case. But changes have to be made.
The most important thing is that whatever they do, they need the monetary resources to, at the end of this season, offer Gilles Lejeune a nice and healthy contract, because he is talented, he is in their structure, they've invested in him by the end of next season for 3 or 4 years. That's somebody that they need to work on to keep him. That's really important for the future of that team. So in that aspect, I agree with you, Issam. They should focus on talent, and that goes beyond Lejeune. Van Kessel retired, and again, it depends on the money. Let's say they find an influx of money and they want somebody more than Aerts just at the front of the races. They can consider replacing Van Kessel with Ferdinand or with somebody like Clément Horny, both riders who will finish between 10th and 20th in most races. They can squeeze in a top 10 in an exact course. It won't really move the needle, but it's a good addition to the training group of the team. If they have more money, then there's 2 options, Toon van der Bos and Ryan Kamp. These would be top 10 riders that they could add to their rider park, but they would need a bit more money for that. Since I don't really foresee that happening, you're right with the premises that talent is crucial. And you can see that in the past years they've tried to sign a couple of riders they believe in when they're still in the 15-16. They had Cabassa, they had Lejeune. But I think that they should not extend Robin Marchand. Second year U23 past winter, didn't really perform, never was really a big talent in the juniors, didn't really develop. Replace him with Lennis Jacobs, Belgian rider, quite tiny, super technically gifted. He is a lot more fragile and younger in his body appearance than his rivals. If he grows a little bit over the past coming years, I think you can have a really, really good talent on your hands with him. And that will take time, and there you're right about the communication. That will take time, and you need commitment, but that is their best way forward, trying to find these raw diamonds out there and develop them into well-developed riders. So in that context, it's crucial that they keep Lejeune, their biggest talent. They've invested in him for a few years, but and I don't really want to make this too much about one single rider, and especially because it's a junior, but if you were Lejeune, next year you're going to be a second-year junior. You're going to make the step to the U23 after. This year, as a first year, you won the World Cup in Hulst. Multiple teams will be interested in picking him up. Would you stick with Deschacht if you are him?
If I had the choice, I would be calling today to other teams and try to see if they have a spot for me, and if there's any interest, I would definitely have a look at least, because I think that for someone like him with the potential that he has, if you have ambition, you don't want to be in a team like Deschacht and FSP. I think, and that's how I look at it currently, right? I mean, I think we can be honest about the performance of that team and the way they have been running, and the times that they have got some negative media, or at least some questionable things that have happened there. It's a bit underwhelming, and for a rider of the caliber of Lejeune, I think that he should be looking elsewhere. But that would be me. It could be that he has a very good feeling there and they're supporting him very well, and it could be that he stays there. But I think that if he is being assisted by someone that is honest for his rider, then he would definitely be looking elsewhere and try to find a contract somewhere with Roodhoofd or with a Trek Baloise, or maybe elsewhere. But I wouldn't stay.
The thing with this partnership is that they do offer a pathway for him that makes it less likely that he necessarily needs to seek success elsewhere. Obviously, the structure that the Roodhoofds have is super impressive, but there's also this thing that's loyalty, right? They invest in him when he's a 15, 16. They support him throughout the juniors. So in that sense, I can see the motivation to stay in the comfortable environment that you're used to for a number of years, and that has brought him some good steps in his development. Of course, there's other programs, but what I find interesting is here is that you don't mention Pauwels Sauzen, because Pauwels Sauzen, through this partnership that Deschacht has made with Lotto, is put in a very particular situation. It's not that great for them. They are the last one of the traditional full-time cyclocross program philosophy at the moment. You have Ridley, but they offer some mountain biking and some gravel, and it's not the same, but it's also different than Pauwels Sauzen. Pauwels Sauzen at this point is, the Asterix and Obelix village, the small Galician town holding on to the standards of 10-15 years ago when the rest of the world has evolved. Yeah, we do some road racing through the cyclocross structure, but the number of riders that they are able to sign is reducing rapidly. The trend that has set in outside of the Netherlands and Belgium many years ago, that the riders either go to the road or want to combine road with cyclocross, has caught up to Belgium as well. You see that riders like Mats van den Einde want to combine road with cyclocross. You see Senna Remijn, Skye Sole, those Dutch riders. And Pauwels Sauzen doesn't have that much to offer for them. And it also doesn't really appear that Mette Penning is actively seeking for that. He was already... It took very long for him to arrange a setup for Leonie Bentveld. And in that, now I mentioned that, I also remember that Denise Betsma could be a rider that Deschacht, hence FSP, could sign on their women's side if they want somebody with experience to guide some younger talents if they decide to kickstart that. But back to what I was saying about Pauwels Sauzen, it's really tough to see what type of riders they can sign, because especially on the women's side, the number of full-time cyclocross riders, it's super, super tiny.
It's not looking great indeed. And, with Pauwels Sauzen, it's a little bit... It feels like they are always a step behind. We've seen it also this year a little bit on the men's side, where sure, talent is coming through, but it feels like they might have missed out on the biggest talents. It's very hard to speculate right now, but and we have to wait and see. But it seems to be that case, at least for me. And it's especially if you look on their women's side, it's they had, of course, Van Empel before she made that transfer to Visma Leasebike. After that, hasn't been really much. Betsema is now also leaving, but Betsema is in her, latest phase of her career, I would say. She would have been probably, if Pauwels Sauzen really was thinking it through, I guess, she could have been maybe beneficial to help out. As you say, I think that she will definitely have the knowledge and the experience to help out young talent. Pauwels Sauzen doesn't really think that through that much, and I think that they are... It looks to me at least that they are more focused on the men's side than the women's side, and the women's side definitely gets some attention, but doesn't really seem like they get the attention that it needs to really get something out of it. I don't really know how they're going to be able to fix that. It doesn't seem like it will be fixed anytime soon, right? I mean, it's not like they have some talent riding in the junior classes that will get through the ranks and be eventually will be representing Pauwels Sauzen in the near future in the women's category. I don't think that will be the case. It's difficult, and you have to be on it from I think, I wouldn't say a very young age, but you need some sort of a structure, I guess, to pick them up. And I think that Pauwels Sauzen currently doesn't have that. Seems not to be really interested in it, and at least not in that development. I think they are interested when some of the women finally get through, but most of the time when they do, they already have a contract with another team, and it's very hard then at that point to get them into yours. So I think that for Pauwels Sauzen it's just currently a difficult situation, especially on the women's side. And on the men's side, there is some talent, but it's just really the question if they are going to be able to continue what Van Toerenhout and Iserbyt are doing currently.
The things we've picked up from the media and conversations with people who are in Pauwels Sauzen and were within Pauwels Sauzen but have left do reinforce that vision that Mette Penninge treats the women's category more like a valuable add-on, but doesn't really seem bothered to invest the same level of effort and resources to it as he does for the development on the men's side. And that's becoming problematic because look at where the best female riders are. They're on road teams. Schreiber, SD Works, Vash, SD Works, Backstedt, Canyon SRAM, Wolf, Gladenova, Visma. Ferguson is even so talented that she goes to Movistar, a fully road team, and they say, wow, we're going to support you in cross. Mette Penninge can't compete for that. And on the men's side, he does have talent, right? Corsus, I'm quite bullish on him. I think he has a bright future. De Bruikere has impressed me this season. Really impressive development considering where he came from. But the pond of riders which he's competing for is drying up. He's competing for full-time cyclocross riders from the Netherlands and Belgium. So, considering that he's not investing in a structure because he doesn't want to or doesn't have the ability to offer these multidisciplinary riders a structure that gives them the opportunity to combine high-level road racing with high-level cross racing, he needs to do something about that pond of riders drying up because there are fewer and fewer Dutch-Belgian talents that aspire a full-time cyclocross career. They typically return to full-time cross rider after they consider their road season unsuccessful. But what can he do? Because that pond, it's dry, there's a few fish in there, but there's many people trying to fish in there. Crelan Corendon is in there. We just discussed Deschacht with Gilles Lejeune. There is also still the Baloise Trek Lions. There's Ridley. It's tough. So, one thing that he could do, and I don't really expect this, but look outside of the Netherlands and Belgium. Pauwels Sauzen will be happy that their jersey is visible at the front of the race. It's still the sponsor mentioned. And tell me, is there anybody in Belgium that buys Pauwels Sauzen because Elie Iserbyt is the brand endorser? I don't really think so. I think it would be fine if they find some. And then you open up the realm of possibilities to sign other full-time cyclocross riders, like maybe Stefano Vietzi last year. Or, for sure, Christophe Bazant, Czech rider. I think he is still talented. He just had his season ruined by a lot of illnesses. That can happen, very unfortunate. Kristina Zemanova, yes, she does a bit of road racing, but you can accommodate a program that she's racing now. But you could have given her more cross support. I mean, I don't expect this to happen, but it would have been a good possibility for him to look at some more riders he could sign.
There's a reason why I didn't mention it. I know what you mean, but, as you said already, Mette Penninge and trying to sign some foreigners. It's not really his thing, and he has done so in the past, I think once or twice, but it hasn't been really something he eyes that much. He doesn't really look to that as something that he potentially could be doing. But I definitely agree with you. I think that if he wants to have some sort of, I would say, within the next 4 or 5 years, you want to have at least one woman at the front. I think then that you need to look abroad, because it's not going to be coming from Belgium, is it? But then I think his biggest issue, as you say, is there are not that many women currently in cyclocross that are full-time cyclocross riders. Most of them have at least, are either tied to road cycling as well, or do mountain bike and road, or mountain bike alone. So I think they have to try and find something that Deschacht Hens FSP has found, I guess, with Lotto. That's going to be very difficult. Or they can go for a construction where they individually try to help a rider out. But I think that is just so complicated, I guess, that a rider, when he hears about such a situation, probably already is looking elsewhere. So they could actually find something, but it's just, I don't think that they actually care or bother. It's just, for them, it's basically, there's no Belgian talent, so let's just focus more on the men's side. It's not really that they are trying to get something done, and of course they will say otherwise, but at least I haven't seen any evidence of that.
You can see a sharp contrast between the teams that do have this pathway for women and those who don't. You can see that Pauwels is able to sign riders like, Brandt, but she's more experienced, but okay, let's take Van Anrooy and Moors. They're able to sign them based on the fact that they have a very stable and healthy relationship with Lidl Trek. You can see that the Roodhoofd teams are all very robust as well. You can even see, to an extent at a step lower, that the Proximus team is in a relatively good position because they can offer their riders a road program as well. For Pauwels Sauzen, there is no women's program, and the same issue exists for Charles Ligois. They don't have a women's program. They have a special deal brokered for Molengraaf. Brouwers is a full-time cyclocross rider that they've really invested in her development. But that's it. Geert Wellens left that team, and he was very vocal about his disagreements that they could not provide a single road program for women or strike a partnership because they're affiliated to Wanty. And as a result, Backstedt left, Schreiber left. He's speculating that Molengraaf will also leave once her deal is up there to race elsewhere. You need to have that if you want to be relevant on the women's side. Ridley doesn't have it. It's a new team, but for them, I think it's relatively easy to strike a deal with Uno X. So you're seeing everywhere that these teams are finding solutions to accommodate either for their best road riders that also do cross to race at the highest level, or for their other riders to at least be able to race some road. And with that, I mean that the riders who eventually come to the decision that they're a full-time cyclocross rider, look at Iserbiet, look at Van Toerenhout, look at Lars van der Haar. These riders race a solid road program in Belgium. It's the structure of Hens FSP as it was that I mentioned. They raced the Baloise Belgium Tour, they raced Dwars door het Haagland, they race a number of these one-day smaller stage races, and it's fine. But you're seeing now an increasing move on the talent that comes from the bigger road teams because they've awoken to the fact that this is a gold mine for talent. So you see that Agostinacho, who wins the junior men's world title, he is not just talking with Alpecin. There's 3-4 other World Tour teams he's in negotiation with. That's a different situation. So where some riders might eventually return to cross to become a full-timer like Nieuwenhuis, and they might be happy with that road program, if you want to work with the biggest talents, you're seeing increasingly the importance of that road program, of that partnership, because else they will move elsewhere. The skills here at the developmental level are completely shifting. The X and Y axes are being inverted, but where most teams are adapting, Pauwels Sauzen is left behind, and the obvious options to partner with, they've run out. They're not really there anymore. Now the only thing I can kind of come up with is that they try and strike some sort of partnership with Titema, but also that I don't really see it happening because it's very unconventional.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, and it's as I said in the beginning of this, it seems like they're always somewhat a step behind, and you just see that others have a plan in some sort and can facilitate it for the talents that are coming through their teams, and Pauwels Sauzen just doesn't seem to have that. And the thing is, the reason why I'm saying that they are always somewhat a step behind, this isn't an issue that they have for just a year or two. It's an issue that they have for a couple of years, and they are very well aware of. But it just doesn't seem that they are able to pick up on and actually have a solution for it. And I think that is going to be in the future arguably problematic. I don't think that they will not have any future, but I think that it's just going to be more and more difficult for them to find someone that is going to be able to compete at the front. For sure, we are seeing that now on the women's side. But I think that eventually that could also become an issue on the men's side. Although in Belgium you still have this somewhat of a culture on the men's side where you find these somewhat pure cyclocross riders where they are basically focusing everything in their career onto cyclocross. But that is something that could change as well in the future. We don't know.
Those riders will absolutely be there, but as we established earlier, that pond of riders is getting smaller, and they're not the only one operating in that area trying to sign those riders. So it will be interesting to see how that develops, and so far we've mainly focused on why riders want it from their ambition point of view, but we've also seen over the past few years that the knowledge about how cyclocross riders go about their road racing has shifted, it's changed as well. You see that where in the past it was at most a few crits to kind of get some speed, or the Tour de Liège, it's now become a thing that you see that these cross riders want to build a very big endurance base, a very high level of speed that they want to take with them from the road in the summer, that they can carry on into the cross season. And that's, of course, a bit of the discussion of why are these riders so good? Are they good road riders because they do cross, or are they good cross riders because they do that road experience? There's a bit of a debate there, but I think what we've seen for sure is just the sheer level of volume that these best riders get from racing in the World Tour, because their engine is able to support that, helps them in the cross and helps them reach a higher level where you can see that pretty much doing no road program is not an option anymore for anyone. And you see that the importance of doing a well-established, well-rounded road program are increasing significantly as well.
It has been, more and more evident, especially in the later years of the sport, in which we just see that riders, if they are having a very good summer, that it at times can really result also in a very good cyclocross season. You obviously have to make sure that your program in cyclocross fits what you're doing in the summer as well, because fatigue could also play a role, but it just helps. It just helps, and I think that this was something that was known before. It's not something crazy that we're seeing right now, because again, the time when Rabobank was more involved, it was also a thing where certain riders were talking about that, and the fact that when you're racing at a team like Rabobank, you just the material that you're getting and the races that you could ride on the road as well, it just helps a little bit. And I think that as you say, with Van der Poel and Van Aert, it just became more and more evident, and it became just a known fact, I guess, and everybody was not only seeing it but also wanted to replicate it in a way. And I think that that is just now something that the talents that are coming through want to have, and want to have that support from their teams. And if you are not able to offer that, it's just going to be more and more difficult to keep a team with the best talents, and you might have to go for the guys that are just just under that. There's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes out of that can come something great, but it just makes your position more and more, I guess, vulnerable to the teams of the likes of Roodhoofd. I think that the way they have put their structure together in the last couple of years has been somewhat remarkable, been really incredible, and it seems that they are not really shying away right now also from signing riders outside of this Belgium-Netherlands spectrum. It's not a crazy amount, but they have been doing so in cyclocross. So I think it's interesting to see how that will develop, and with Pauwels Sauzen as well, how they will somewhat bounce back from it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Some work to be done for not only Pauwels Sauzen, also Hens working out that new structure with Lotto and finding some more money. Issam, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for having me.
And we will be back fairly soon with another episode covering some more road racing and another topic in cyclocross. And I'm planning to fairly soon start a series of off-season interviews with a couple of shareholders, stakeholders from cyclocross as well. So stay tuned for that. Thanks everyone for listening, and see you guys soon. Goodbye.